Hello everyone, my name is Marius Bota. I'm a freelance illustrator and concept artist, and I'm here today to pretty much guide you through my workflow and thought process when I'm making an illustration. The illustration that you're about to see is called the Dragon Rise. I decided to go with a dragon themed image because I had the opportunity to work on certain things recently that involved that, and that pretty much based on that I decided to just go with this and have a illustration that's represents or has a few dragons in it, and each and every one would be different from one another. So uh, I hope you guys enjoy this. So when it comes to sketching, I have several ways of dealing with this, and especially when it comes to sketching for a illustration. Um, if it's for a client, it always depends on what he wants. It can be just one sketch, and then you show it, and they decide if it's good or not, or if they want certain changes to that. And the way you achieve that one sketch, can be with several sketches actually. So there's that, or they can ask you for several sketches and with value and so on. So it always depends with clients. It always depends on what they want. uh, but when it comes to working for myself, having personal pieces, and what happened with this one, it's actually it's a longer process. Usually, it can take up to 2 weeks to just have the right composition and idea, I guess, or it just depends. Like, I like to think about what I want to do a lot before I start, because like if I just start, right away, you can just pretty much have you can just paint the first thing that comes to mind, and then it's not always the best thing ever. Um, so for this one, it was a 1 to 2 week process before I actually started painting it. I had I had I started visualizing the idea, and how the composition will look, and then one day when I went out, I sketched in my sketchbook. I made a sketch for this. You can actually see it here. This is basically the rough idea of how I wanted the image to look. Of course, things were subject to change, and they will be throughout this entire process. You will see the image will change, and certain things will change very late into the image, when I just decide to scrap some things because they don't work. In the early stages, like, what it changed a lot was the main dragon's head. It felt way too big for what I wanted to do, and it didn't give the right flow for the eye to go through the image, and it felt like it didn't help the composition as much. So I ended up replacing that with another head, and gave him a bird beak, a crow beak, as I call it. I guess that's what I actually wanted it to be. And I actually decided to give him no eyes. Uh, Part of it being that he has the this girl on top of him that will help him fly, and will pretty much steer him and so on. They're bound, and they know each other, each other's body language, and they can help each other go to where they want. So that was the idea. Composition wise, I started I wanted to have like some sort of like diagonal, imaginary diagonal going through the image, and that's how it started. And then I placed the girl on the third, and from then on it was just pretty much drawing everything based on that. uh, and but at the same time, I didn't want her necessarily to be the center of interest. I kind of wanted the eye to flow to the image and eventually, come to her. But I wanted the image to be as much about her, and but at the same time, I wanted to be, about the dragons as well. So, I hope I actually managed to do that in the end. I hope you guys enjoy what I come up with. And in terms of brushes, um, what I want to talk about is I just want to say what I use, and and to be honest, like I usually have periods of when I uh, like like certain brushes, and I tend to use them almost exclusively for everything. It's just when I need texturing, I would just switch to brushes that are more suited for that. But basically, right now, I really like using a diagonal line brush. It looks like a line. It's in a 45 angle, and I really like it for sketching or blocking values, or it's really good for wrapping forms. It can do, it can do so many things with it. Uh, and I also like the rough look that it leaves behind, and so I use this really a lot. And then I have like the other brushes that I use recently are, again, they're pretty simple. It's nothing really special about them. And my brush pack is pretty huge, but it's mostly like texture brushes and so on, which you can pretty much get it for yourself on the internet. It's from, it's the sources are pretty much what everyone has at this point. That's what I have as well. It's just they're selected, so I don't have brushes that I don't like to use and so on. I just have what I want to use, and even so, I think it's the brush pack, it's a bit too large, but you never know what you need a brush for, so it's good to have it there. But it's also really good to make your own brushes, of course, because then you know why you made them for. When you pick someone else's brushes, it's kind of hard to know for sure why they made that brush, and it takes probably way more time to figure out the brush, and it would probably be better if you just would do it by yourself if you actually need a brush. Um, so yeah, that's what I think about it. Um, I like to use very few layers, or as very few layers as possible. Reason behind this is I was always attracted to this way of working, mostly because it kind of felt more natural and more, I guess you can call it traditional in a sense. Uh, it just, you know, it feels like it's more natural and builds a lot of confidence, in my opinion. Because when you use a lot of layers, or when you're used to that, you tend to, be to not think about as much about what you do. You just speed things up, or what's or whatever, and then because you have that certainty that, oh, okay, if I don't like it, I can just close this layer down, and it's gonna be okay. So I always liked to think about the brush stroke that I put down, and at least I, not always, but for the most part, I like to think about that. And I think that's why at least this way of working fits me very well. And I actually enjoy it, and it doesn't give me many headaches when it comes to this, because I don't have many layers to deal with, so I know very easily which is which. And I also want to say that part of the reason I work this way is also, uh, you know, certain jobs that I got required me to work in a certain way, and doing them for a long time. Of course, there could have been ways around, what they say you should work with, or like, let's say you need to provide a, a file in a certain, with certain layers organized in a certain way. You can work around that as well, but I didn't want to have the extra thing to worry about. So I just decided to use few layers, or at times I would just pretty much paint the entire image on one layer. I would just not have any layers. Or actually I had like background or something, and then I'll have the character on another, and that's it. And when I really felt like I needed some big changes, I would just make a new layer, do the change, and then just, if I liked it, I just merge it down, and that was it, and then continue on. So that's pretty much how I work. You'll see even in this image I end up with like probably 20 layers or so, with including adjustment layers or something close to that. And you'll see like how, if you pay attention to that, like I'll merge layers down and so on, because I like to have as few layers as possible. It also makes working on a machine way easier, and if you're also recording, then it's way easier uh, if you do that. So I wanted to keep that in mind as well. As far as the light source for the image, I kind of had two ways of going about it. Um, I I could have went with a more darker scene, a scene that would took place like within the clouds. It would be more dramatic, I guess. I would not have the powerful source of light that I have here. And I could have went that way as well, but I decided to go with this one because it seemed like it would be just. I wanted to go with something a bit more light-hearted, and I felt like I could have achieved the depth that I wanted to more easily with this, or like at least like transcribe my idea, that the dragon rise, better with this sort of scene. So I ended up picking this one, and I also liked the idea that I will have, uh, at least like two strong light sources. One would have been, obviously the sun that hits the clouds and the dragons and the character, and the secondary one would be just the light bouncing from the clouds. That's what I thought about it. Basically, the dragons, depending where they are, or the character, they would get a certain amount of bounce light according to the distance from a cloud. So the guy in the dragon in the top left corner, he would get more bounce light on his right side of the face, because he's closer. He just has a cloud really close to him. He's just closer to the cloud, I guess. That's how I thought about it. That was my way of thinking about it. It's probably, if that was the case, the others should have had a more intense way of a more intense secondary light source. But I didn't want that. I just wanted him to be the one that catches the most out of that. And also, like, I think it helped uh, him in particular with defining his face a little bit more. I could have gotten the other way as well. Like, I could have just have it a bit more darker, and it would just read as well, I guess, as it reads right now. But that was the way I thought about it, and that's was the way that I did with it. Um, Also, the character remains pretty, like, not involved, if I can say that, in the action for a big amount of time, and I would. This is one of the things that I think I mentioned before. I don't mind going back and changing things if they need to be changed, even later on into the painting process, even if I'm like close to finish. I don't mind doing that. And this was one of the cases, though it wasn't that advanced. I mean, I wasn't that deep into the color process that it was such a hassle. So, I went back, and you'll see I would get her more involved into the action, because right now she's way too idle for this. She just looks like she sits there, and uh, she basically doesn't care at this point that she is there. So I wanted to make her part of the image, and you'll see how I change her. Um, I change her pose entirely. to fit the image more and to make her more involved into the action. Also, I want to also touch when it came to the light and so on. Uh, I think it's also really important to keep in mind, the contrast and especially I find that a good understanding of black and white it's also very important. One of the things that I noticed is if you want to place let's say black somewhere, you want to use black. I feel like it's better to have it be saturated than less saturated. A saturated black, then I think it's better. And also I noticed that it offers a way intense contrast than a desaturated black. And if you can even go further with that. If you have let's say a warm surface and you wanna have to put black somewhere there, if you use a warm black, then it would not help as much. It would not create such intense contrast that if you would use a cold black, on a warm thing, and vice versa. If you use a warm black on a cold surface, then again it will be a stronger contrast. At least that's how I noticed it, and I like to use that a lot. I tend to stay away from desaturated blacks, and I also try to stay away from white most of the times, unless I really want things to shine a lot. Like in this case, the wing of the one of the dragons, the one that resembles like a dragonfly's wing. I want that white there, and speculars, of course. I like to have them, be white and so on. Um, so that's what I pretty much think of the usage of black and white. Um, I wanted like every dragon to have its own feel. I I I kept the idea of the dragon, uh, for all of them, pretty much, I guess. But at the same time, I wanted to inspire, to drag my inspiration from certain animals, and in this case, it kind of ended up being that at least three dragons would be inspired from aquatic life. One of them would be inspired from a pufferfish. One of them would be inspired. At least his head would have been inspired from a salamander. Like at least the texture and the feel of it, I wanted to be like a salamander's skin, head, and he has a few patterns on him, and also he gets he gets some insect characteristics as well um, on him. And then there's the spirit dragon, which you can't see right now because I didn't want to involve him in painting with the painting of the cloud. So it was just this one element that I could have painted every time, and it wasn't that hard. I just new layer and just painted on that layer, and it would just be easier to correct if I wanted to. And I also knew what I wanted him to be, so that wasn't a problem. He was supposed to be inspired from a jellyfish, so yeah, that was where I dragged my inspirations from for this particular piece and for the dragons. And for the big dragon, it's I know it's more of a traditional dragon, I guess, in sort of way. He will have scales, and he will also have like a very like rock looking aspect, and of course he has the raven beak, and uh, you know I wanted also towards the end. I actually played with that, and I added some contrast between the beak and the actual head. I got rid of the speculars. You will be able to see that, and I'll mention them when time comes. I wanted to get rid of that, make sure there is uh, you can feel the sort of material that it's made from. and I try to do that to my very best. One of the things that I also like to keep in mind a lot when I paint, especially for my personal piece, is um, style, and underneath this is there's gonna be like I'm gonna talk about a few things that I actually keep in mind of. One of it is um, edges, like the difference in edge. Usually when I paint for a client, I I tend to use the lasso tool more or the pen tool more to have that sharp look. Um, it's just commercial work, and it's what actually most of the artists do nowadays. They have those really sharp characters in their illustrations, or so on. They just read really well, and stuff like that. But I am not a very big fan of that. Uh, Especially if it's all everything is sharp, it's sharp and done with the lasso tool or so on. Mostly because I feel like it kind of makes the characters, they're not, they it makes them that, makes them feel like they're not part of the environment. But of course, it can be done right, and they do feel part of the environment. It's just, I guess, a matter of taste from a certain point. And I for one like to have a difference in lines, and not have everything too sharp. I like to have certain edges a bit more blurred out, and feel like they fade into the background, and that way I think I get the background more involved with the characters, and feels everything feels like it belongs. But when you do something with sharp lines, everything is sharp, then you have to achieve this in other ways. You could use chromatic contrast to deal with that, to make them feel like they belong or so on. There's certain ways to deal with that, and depending on how much you want to deal with a certain problem, I guess, you can choose a thing that will work for you. Um, so yeah, that's why I choose to have difference in the edge. I like to be able to play with this. I also uh, like to keep in mind the amount of detail that I actually put into an image. I think it's this is really important. Of course, this is always also, as I mentioned before, it's one of those things that you do depending on who you paint for or what you paint for. Like there's certain jobs that require you to detail a lot, detail your image a lot, and there are some that you can pretty much be yourself. But for my personal images and what I do, I like to be that way. I like to make sure I have a pretty good contrast between details and not so and more loose areas. I think that's really important, because it just makes sure, it's a way to make sure you make the viewer stick to a certain area for longer, and or it's also a way to make sure that you let the viewer's eye relax a bit. It's not when everything in your image is crowded, and it's so, and it's like full of detail, and it's busy. It tends to, like, I don't know, if I guess I can say, quote, fatigue, unquote, your eye. We can put some fatigue on your eye, uh, and then it kind of like it just makes the eye not know where to look. So at least that's how I think about it, and therefore it's really important to have this good balance between detail and not detail, and busy areas and not so busy areas. For example, here, I have, let's say, the character, where the character is on top of the dragon, that can be a busy area, and the wing has a lot of details and so on, and there's the other dragon that's near her. That's a very busy area. So I could have went like two ways with it. I could have like just added like a bunch of like really crazy looking clouds in the back, and have that, and there will be like a lot of like busyness in that area. But instead of that, I actually decided to make the clouds just softer and pretty much almost disappear. And that way I made sure, it's some it's a busy area on top of a calm area. That way I also made sure that the character will read better, because there's nothing to compete with. It's just her and a soft background, and it's also like a room to, I guess, to look at and also get rest at the same time. At least that's how I think about it. And there's usually like the clouds are like the areas where you kind of wanna, I wanted to the eyes to rest, and there are certain you'll see certain patterns, like even uh in front of the beak of the dragon. I have that spot where there's no cloud there. It's just soft and it's calmer. It also helps the beak read better. So that was also one of the things that I thought about it. I thought about when I worked on this. Um, I also changed the position of this dragon because his head was touching too much the bottom side of the image, and it just created a really ugly tangent. And now I pushed him a bit up, and the circle, like how I wanted to the viewer to look, it would kind of lead the viewer back to the main dragon. And that's what I want. Ultimately I want that to be there, to always find ways to make sure the you look back to the dragon and to the most important part of the image, I guess. So that's what I did by lifting the dragon's head a bit more. And there's also a dragon underneath the clouds, and that's another way. That's another area where I guess I can pretty much point and say it was about making sure I put the right amount of detail in, because I didn't want to detail that one too much, because I mean there wasn't any real reason to do so. I mean, not doing it just for the sake of showing that I can do it. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. I just wanted to make sure he will be there, and you'll see he will take more shape pretty soon. And and I just want to suggest that he's there. He is part of this group. He's just about to come out of the dragon. I mean, to come out of the clouds, rise above and join the other ones into the journey. And you'll see, like right now I'm actually defining him a bit more, and give him a bit more shape, and he will read just uh, he will read just enough to the point where he adds to the image and doesn't catch too much of the attention. I just want him to be a secondary thing, or a thing that you would just see after a while, if after spending some time in the image. I also, if you noticed, I used some adjustment layers. I tend to do that now and then if the image doesn't feel right, brightness or color balance and so on, to play with colors a bit more and values and so on. And right now, as you can see, I'm adding the serpent, the spirit serpent, as I like to call it, and it's actually pushed a bit backwards from the big dragon. And oh, he was really fun to paint. As I said, it's inspired from a jellyfish, and I think I know I actually wanted to leave him a bit more, uh, I guess, unfinished. And I guess you can notice that he kind of fades away into the clouds in the back. That was actually intentional. I wanted to leave some areas, just just not so polished, because I wanted the viewer to feel those spots to with what they want, what they think it could be there. In this case, it's same thing in this case, with that dragon. I wanted to not have so many details there that you know would just give everything up. I just wanted the viewer to kind of make what they want of it, of his actual mouth and so on. And I didn't want him to read his head to read that much. Therefore, he kind of fades away into the clouds a bit if you look at the image from a distance. So that was the reason of dealing with him in that way, I suppose. Um, One of the things that I also want to touch about, you'll notice that I didn't work as much on the character until this point, and part of the reason was because when I have a big image, I find it really hard uh, to to deal with small characters, or at least it can be really tricky. You can end up spending so much time on them, and then when you zoom out, you notice that, oh, my image is not done yet or whatever. So I didn't work as much on her early on. I wanted her to leave her to towards the end, and um, I'm also using a smart object layer in order to paint her, in be able to add more detail, because this was a really large file, so it kind of put a strain on my PC. So I had to think of other ways to deal with it. And it was the first time that I actually used smart objects. I knew about them for a while, but I decided to use it for this, and I think it worked pretty well. It really helped me add that extra detail and that extra refining that I felt like it needed to be there, to that female character in the image towards the end. And I don't know, towards the end I also uh, came back to the entire image, and I, especially with the when it comes to like the heads of the dragons, I wanted to make sure I have the right feel of it, and the right colors and patterns and so on. And you'll notice in a few moments that actually going back to the heads, right now, and I'm basically making sure the feel of the skin for them is what I want. I want it to be. I wanted to at least two of them, the ones on the side, the left side, the two of them. I wanted them to be wet. They're inspired from aquatic life, so they're gonna be wet. Like the pufferfish, of course, is a fish that's underwater, but I wanted to, like, this dragon won't live underwater, but I wanted him to feel like he will be wet at all times. He will just catch those speculars on skin, as you will see in a moment. And when I just started getting into that and tightening things up and adding the blicks of light, I guess, and refining the head a bit more. And I do the same thing with the other guy in the bottom. I actually gave him a glaze of purple, and to add some color variation, and then of course I go back and make sure that his his uh his skin looks like more of amphibian skin or salamander skin. Um, so I do this right now for those, and then I actually come back to the character and deal with her, using that smart object, and making sure she's as refined as I wanted her to be. Also, one of the things that I was for this particular piece, um, it kind of stressed me out a bit, was I didn't knew at the time when to actually stop from working on it, because I kind of got lost between the idea of do I want this to I kind of felt like it needed to be a client piece, and at the same time it felt like it needed to be a personal piece. So it was a lot of like trying to decide, okay, do I want to make this look like a more rendered, sharper, you know, thing of painting that I would actually like say do it for a client, or should it just be, what I would do for myself and so on. And ultimately I think I decided to just, make sure it represents me, and it speaks for what I am, and what I and how I like things to look. And of course, and as always with every image, there is always room to work more on it. That you can't necessarily call an image done at any point. There's always something that you can do to it. You can always change something, because it's a painting. It can change everything at any point. That's why you can't actually call it done. At this point, it's all about putting the final touches on the image, and making sure your values are right, and making sure you're attracting the eye into the right place. And all of those small details, they might not seem as much, but it's they do their part. And it come with the texturing on certain areas. It really can add a lot to the picture. And even here, like, I just those that one thing, I just use the lasso tool to select certain areas, and then I try to push the bodies away from the head so they stick out more. And it also helps with the depth, and creates the illusion of depth within the dragons, and so on in the image. um yeah, right now I go back to the character, and she gets the treatment that she deserves, I guess. I work a bit more on her, like I refine her body a bit more. Uh, I I get rid of the really hard edges and rough brush strokes, and work on her face a bit more. Her face doesn't tell me that she wants to be there. She's not really that involved yet. Her body maybe, but her face is not. So I end up actually changing that as well, changing a bit her expression. And it felt, just some eyebrow uh, change, and I felt like it helped a bit, with that. Um, and after that, it's pretty much the image is done. And uh, I decided to just, this was like the last thing that I wanted to do. And after that, it was just some adjustments here and there when I saved her, and then I called it done. Um, One last thing that I actually wanna touch on is, think of what I mean, take everything that I said, with a grain of salt. Like, uh, those are just my ideas, and my it's just the way I think about it, and the way I learn to deal with things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do this in this way, to paint in this way. This is just what I think, and what I think it works for me. And you can take whatever you want from it, and use it in your own work. And you have question, of course, you can contact me. I try to respond to everyone. I actually like talking with people and responding to them if they have questions and so on. Um, so as I said, take everything with a grain of salt. Pick what you think it would work for you. At least that's what I do with when it comes down to other artists. When I see something that they do, I think, okay, will this work for me? If yes, I'll try and take something from it, and have it in my own art. And if not, I just try and find another way, or I don't know. So that's pretty much about it, guys. Thank you very much for uh, joining in and watching this, and thanks a lot for the support, and I'll see you guys next time.